Hello, my name is David Gorevich. I'm a biopharmaceutical analyst specializing in the area of new drugs. What I do is I'm very good at analyzing new treatments and medications for their market potential, for their potential for being approved, and for competitive analysis. Today I'm here to talk to you about FDA advisory panels. FDA advisory panels are a big part of new drugs, and they're a big part. What is an FDA advisory panel? An FDA advisory panel consists of experts whom the FDA calls for a meeting to discuss two key questions: whether a new drug is safe and whether a new drug is effective. So the FDA panels serve as an advisory role. What they do is they advise the FDA as to those key two metrics of safety and efficacy. When would the FDA call an advisory panel? The FDA used to call advisory panels more often. Nowadays, there are a few reasons why the FDA will call an advisory panel. First, if they're genuinely uncertain about whether a drug should be approved or not. In that case, the calling of a panel is not necessarily a good thing. Second, if there's precedent. If the FDA's ruling on a drug is going to set an important precedent, then the FDA might want to cover their back and call a panel to get that kind of additional support. Finally, politics. Politics plays a big role in a lot of what the FDA does, and they have to be very careful with how their actions are perceived. If they say they want to not approve a drug, or they want to approve a drug, or whatever, if they want to make a decision that could politically be unsound or unfortunate, calling in a panel and getting their agreement or disagreement, hopefully, or depending on what they want, that could really cover their back. So in general, calling of a panel is not necessarily a good thing. What is the FDA relation and kind of attitude towards the panels? If the panel votes for something to happen, does it have to happen? The conventional wisdom is that if the FDA advisory panel says approve this drug by a strong vote, then the FDA is going to typically approve it. That is the case. I think a lot of people go wrong when they assume that it's kind of an ironclad rule. In fact, I can think of just off the top of my head, I can think of 3 examples in the past 6 months where the FDA did not follow the advisory panel. Pirfenidone of Intramune, the FDA panel voted for its approval, but the FDA did not approve it. Belatacept, the panel voted for its approval, the FDA did not approve. And finally, just recently, Acthar, the panel voted 22-1, I think, for its approval, but the FDA did not approve it. So panels are typically, so the panel can be ignored. Usually they're followed, of course. That's the general trend. But I think they're not, especially recently, the FDA is really focusing on trying to have a slightly higher degree of safety. They want to protect the public a little bit more than might have, or be perceived that way, or whatever. So they might be a little bit more stringent, even if they don't feel comfortable about a drug. Even with a panel voting on it, they're not going to approve it, that's for sure. Sometimes the panels actually have a different perspective on things than the FDA. For instance, the panelists might be doctors who are, have a different perspective than the FDA. A doctor's perspective and the FDA's perspective is not going to necessarily be the same. So you always have to consider that. Now, these panels are open to the public, and you can usually find the meeting, the minutes, not the minutes, the kind of record of what happened at the panel, what they discussed, what they said. These documents are long, hard to understand, and very complicated, full of jargon, not easy reading. I love reading them. I just find them so interesting, and I find a great source of competitive advantage. The panel, the only way to really know what's going on is to get all the information, and the FDA panels tend to leave a lot of information, which might be hard to get otherwise. So finally, one more thing you should know about the FDA panels is that if they're negative, then they're a lot more likely to be followed than if they're positive. So if the panel says you should approve the drug, the FDA seems to be more confident saying no, we're not going to approve it, than the opposite. The panel says this drug shouldn't be approved. It's harder for the FDA to say we're going to approve it. So as you can see, an FDA panel is not always a good thing. It's usually called because there's some reason. In general, it's been either called because there's some aspect that the FDA wants elucidated or made more clear. They're very interesting. I find them a lot of fun. I love analyzing them, and I guess because that's kind of what I do. I'm David Gurevich, biopharmaceutical analyst. I've written more than, I don't even know the number, at least 160 articles on conditions and medications, and the growing amount of YouTube videos, including this one. And I really focus on new drugs and competitive market analysis of biopharmaceutical companies. I hope that clears up some of the issues and concerns and questions you might have about FDA panels. If you have any questions, just leave a comment and let me know, and I'd be glad to share what I know. Thank you very much. Have a great day.